Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. In today's video I have the new Hourglass holiday palette here to try. I have the Deer palette, I have the Fox palette, and of course I also have the Swan palette. If you want to see me trying on the Horse palette, which is this year's Sephora exclusive palette, I didn't purchase it because I had all of the shades for that one already, so I went ahead and tried that one already in a will I buy it type video talking about this entire collection, which I'm going to link right there on the eye. So if you want to see me try the Horse palette, that's the video you need to watch. But in today's video we are focusing on these three. I'm going to be going in detail through the Swan, Fox, and Deer palette. I'm going to be trying every single shade from every single one of these. I'm going to be swatching it all for you, and I'll ultimately tell you what I think about this collection and which palette would probably be best for you. If by the end of this video you're interested in purchasing any of these, I do have my link down below in the description box of this video, and I also have some discount codes down there that are currently working. Whenever you shop for my links, it helps out my channel, and the discount codes will save you 10% on the Hourglass website, so definitely check it out. These ambient palettes with the beautiful animal theme and the paintings outside have been coming out for a few years, and it's usually always one of the highlights of the holiday season. I know it's still September, but these are Hourglass's holiday palettes. They just usually bring them out at the start of the fall season. For the past several years, they've come with this type of format on the inside where they have finishing powders, bronzers, blushes, and highlighters, and 6 shades total. In some of them you get more or less blushes, more or less amount of finishing powder, but there's always 6 pans in these palettes. The other exciting thing about these palettes is that in a lot of cases, a lot of the shades that the palettes bring in them are brand new shades to the Hourglass line, and I'll go into detail about which shade from each palette is new and which shade from each palette is an already existing shade. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, besides these 3 palettes, they also launched the Horse palette, and the Horse palette didn't have any shades that I didn't already own, so I already tried the Horse palette for you in a separate video because I already owned all of the shades. And also, since I wanted to invest in 3 of the palettes so that I could show you everything, I went ahead and skipped the one that I already technically had in my collection. I forgot to bring my phone with me to the filming studio, but if I remember correctly, this year the price of these palettes is $95 each. If that's not the price, I'll put the correct price on the screen right now, but I believe these are retailing for $95 each, and as I said, I left you some discount codes down below that will save you 10%, so that will be $86-ish for the palette rather than the full price, which is a little bit more palatable. Now that this is a luxurious release, and usually Hourglass sells individual pans this size for around $20 to $22 each, so technically this is an amazing savings, okay? It's one of the other reasons why these palettes are so popular. Now I did film myself using the Deer palette yesterday so that I didn't have to do it all in one sitting, so let's go ahead and roll that footage. Let's go ahead and try out the Hourglass Deer palette. Here's what the outer box packaging looks like, and then here is the real deal. I'm going to go ahead and take off my little plastic wrapping. I really like the outside images of these palettes, especially when they are animal themed. And the Deer palette is the lightest out of the 3 palettes I purchased myself. There are 3 new and 3 existing shades in this palette. The Dream Light finishing powder is existing. The Aura Light finishing powder is new, this marbled one right here. The Diffuse Bronze Light bronzer is an existing shade. This highlighter in Iridescent Strobe Light is also an existing shade, but both of the blushes are new in this palette: Radiant Peach and Vibrant Pink. When it comes to these Hourglass yearly palettes and Hourglass powders in general, I feel like the swatches really don't do the products justice, but I will show you the swatches anyways. Starting with the Dream Light finishing powder. These finishing powders are pretty translucent, and this one has a pretty neutral base. Here's the finishing powder in Aura Light. This one's a bit more like a sand color, but still pretty translucent. Diffused Bronze Light. which is a pretty light neutral bronzer shade. Iridescent Strobe Light Highlighter, which has a bit of a sheen to it, but it's not super dramatic. The Radiant Peach Blush, which is a beautiful buildable blush with a natural finish. And the Vibrant Pink Blush, which almost looks like fully matte, and it's a beautiful Barbie pink type color. So check it out right here. Again, these really do not do these palettes justice, but they give you an idea of what the colors are about to look like on the face. I thought about doing a contour color underneath the bronzer to have a bit of a shape to my face already, but I want to show you what it looks like with nothing underneath. All I'm wearing is foundation, concealer, and a setting powder at the moment. And I'm using some cinch brushes that I'm trying for the very first time. They're pretty small, so I felt like they would be perfect to grab the shades from here. This is the F05, and I am grabbing the bronzer with it, and I'm going to start working it all throughout the forehead. Moving on to the cheek, just buffing it upwards, connecting it to the forehead bronzer up here. Lastly, the jawline, and I'm just doing little dashes up and down on the edge of my jaw. I'm also going to hit the side of my nose here and just repeat these steps on the other side. The only thing I will say about this Dear palette, especially if you're around my complexion, is to note that I've had to go back and dip my brush into that bronzer several times in order to build it up to my level of like bronzer liking, because it is pretty light. But as you can see, it does build up beautifully. And so here is the bronzer fully applied. I'm going to move on to one of the finishing powders, the one that is an already existing shade in the color Dream Lights right here. And with it, I'm going to buff the center of my forehead. I'm using the F06 from Cinch Beauty. And I'm also going to hit the innermost corner of my under eyes with this lighter shade. Moving on to the F04, I'm going to do the pink blush first. A little higher up here, close to the temple, and right under the outer corner of the under eye, and mixing it with the bronzer. And I would probably not usually combine these two blush shades, but I'm going to do it today because I want to show you all of the shades from this palette. And so once I'm happy with the amount of pink blush I have, I'm going to use the other side of this same brush on the coral color. And I'm going to apply that closer to the apples of my cheeks and blend it into the pink blush and the bronzer. And this peachier blush has a bit more glow to it than the pink one does. Now that I did all of that, I'm going to go back with the smaller brush, and this time I'm going to use the new finishing powder in the shade Aura Lights. And I'm going to buff it between the blush and the first finishing powder I applied, because this one is a bit darker, and that way it'll also kind of buff and soften my blushes a bit. I'm also going to buff it between the bronzer and the first finishing powder on my forehead. And notice the difference between before and after I applied this finishing powder. I applied it over here, but not over here, and see how this looks a bit more stark and contrasting, and this has just been softened beautifully. So that's what these finishing powders will do for you. I've applied 5 out of the 6 shades. All I'm missing is the highlighter, and so here is how things are looking like so far. And lastly, I'm going to apply the highlighter with the F02 by lightly tapping and buffing at the very top of my cheekbone here. What do you think? What do you think? And so take a look, this right here is the finished look with the Dear palette. If the bronzer was a smidge darker, it would have been perfect for me. If you are lighter than me, you'll probably like it even more than I do, and I really like it quite a bit. But I wish I didn't have to go back to the bronzer to build it up as many times as I did. That is my only thing with this one. Otherwise, it is absolute perfection. I love the highlighter and the blushes. I love both of the finishing powders. And this palette was a good one for me to get, because the only shade I personally owned from this one was this finishing powder. Everything else is new to me, and I will say the blushes in this one are my favorite part because they're both lovely. Welcome back, and the second palette we're going to try is this one right here. This is the Ambient Lighting Edit on La Fox palette, and check out what the outer box packaging looks like right here. Here's what the actual palette looks like. I'm a big fan of navy, and this has the most stunning navy packaging. And then once you open it, take a look at the inside shades right here. Out of this year's palette, this is the one that is going to be best suited for darker complexions. But as per usual, even if I'm really pale, I am going to try and do my best to try it on myself and make it work for myself. We'll see how that goes. I mainly bought it to swatch it, to show it to you, and to tell you what I think about this one. And also I want to compare it to other years' darkest palette to see if they are moving in the right direction. One of the most exciting things about this year's Fox palette is that this is the palette that has the biggest amount of brand new shades to the Hourglass brand. So let's go ahead and start swatching this one. The only existing shade is this blush color right here. It's called Lucid Glow, but the rest of the shades around it are all brand new shades to the Hourglass brand. First color is a highlighter color, and the shade is Solar Glow. Very beautiful gold highlight. Our existing shade, which is the blush Lucid Glow, which is this peachy color. It's like a peachy color with gold sparkles in it. The next color is a finishing powder, and it's a pretty dark finishing powder. In fact, I'm thinking I might use it as a bronzer on myself, but it looks promising as a finishing powder for dark complexions for sure. And that is the shade Desert Light. That would totally work on me as a bronzer with a bit of a satin finish to it, if you will. Starting on the bottom row, we have two blushes. First, this one is called Canyon Heat, and it's like a cooler tone bricky type color. It looks very lovely. Not a bright brick reddish shade, but it's definitely got some orangey rusty type of situation going on. It's very pretty. Then we have Amethyst Haze right here, which is a blush with a beautiful plum undertone. And then lastly, we have the bronzer, which is also new, and the bronzer is called Bronze Fusion. Take a look right there. Now, considering this right here is a beautiful finishing powder for darker complexions, I feel like the bronzer could have been darker than that, because it's darker but not that far off. I'm gonna put it right here for comparison. See, this is the finishing powder and that's the bronzer. It's like a tiny bit darker, but I feel like there should have been more of a difference if we wanted this palette to be even better for darker complexions. Dark and deep complexions could absolutely use every single shade, but I'm not sure about the bronzer. I'm not sure that this bronzer is actually going to add depth to anyone with a dark complexion. It might add a bit of warmth maybe, but depth probably not. I'm going to start with bronzers. I'm going to use my Rephr 05, and I'm going to use the finishing powder as a bronzer first, because obviously there's no finishing powder for my complexion in here. So I'm going to, with the Rephr number 5, grab a bit of that finishing powder and buff it. You can see immediately it's like boom, color. Buff it on my forehead, cheeks, and jaw. And so I'm just doing little buffing circular motions to blend it on my face. Obviously, these are not the perfect colors for me, but I wanted to show you this as a finishing powder and what it looks like on my light complexion. I'm going to go in with the bronzer now, which is a little darker, a little warmer, but I honestly don't think it'll make that much of a difference. And I'm just going to add it the same way. I think this Fox palette will be for anyone starting with a tan complexion. If your complexion is light like mine, this is simply just not the palette made for us. We have other options within this collection. So here is both bronzers applied, meaning the finishing powder and the actual bronzer on me. Here's what the highlighter would look like with my complexion, with my skin tone. This highlighter, I will say, is very metallic, so it's not my cup of tea to begin with. Even if it was a very light color highlighter, I would probably not be super into it. I like the more toned down highlighters from Hourglass, which is why I put it first, because now I can put a blush over it. But that's what the highlighter looks like. And then I'm going to try all three blushes to the best of my ability. So I'm going to do this Amethyst one. It's pretty pigmented for me. I'm going to do it super high up on my cheek up here, basically by the tail of my eyebrow and temple, just to show you what that would look like on someone with a light complexion. To me, because it has that very amethyst undertone, it looks like a bruise on someone with my light complexion, but on someone with a tan or darker complexion, this would look really beautiful. I'm also going to use this color here, so let me put this one next. So you can see what it looks like right over my cheek. Obviously also not a color made for me. You know what? I think that Hourglass is moving in the right direction, because in previous years I was able to make the dark palettes work for my light skin, even if they weren't my favorite thing to apply. And with this year's palette, I know that this is like nothing I could ever make work. Like, you're looking at it, look a little bit like a clown right now, because these colors are way too dark and way too pigmented, and the tones aren't right for my complexion. And I feel like that tells me, that indicates that this is going to be much better than previous years dark palettes for dark complexions, because I'm not able to make this work on me at all, and I used to be able to do that with the darker palette from Hourglass. I only have one more shade to try, which is the one that's existing. I'm not even going to try and make it look pretty. I'm just going to put it in the center of my forehead so you can see it, and I'll take this off and move on to the Swan palette, which is a palette that will work for me. So I'm just going to rub it right here in the center. The already existing shade is the only one that I can make work for myself. Everything else definitely for a darker complexion than mine. So let me wipe this off. I'll come back looking pale again, and we'll try the Swan palette next. This is good. The fact that this does not work on me is great news. So if you have a dark complexion, you might finally have an Hourglass palette that actually works for you. I'm back, and at last, let's go ahead and try the Swan palette. Here's what the artwork and packaging of this one looks like. I really love the white background on this one. As I was saying, I love the white background, and I love the purpley hues that the shadows of the feathers have, as well as the beautiful white flowers. And once you open this one, here is what it looks like. This one has one finishing powder, one highlighter, one bronzer, and 3 new blushes. I see things that I think I'm going to love about the Swan palette, and I'm also seeing some things that are probably just not for me. The 2 things that immediately jump out at me that I'm like, I don't know how much I'll enjoy that, is the highlighter looks pretty metallic. It is lighter than the one we just tried, the very gold one from the Fox palette. It's definitely a lighter gold shade, but it does look just as metallic as that one. We'll see once I try it. And then this shade right here has that purpley undertone that makes it look very brucey on my like complexion. I do, however, really think I'll love these 2 blushes here. The bronzer looks incredible, and the finishing powder looks like it would work for me. So let's go ahead and swatch everything. By the way, this one has 2 already existing shades and 4 new shades. The highlighter is new, and the whole entire bottom row is new. This right here is Dim Light, which is very popular, used in a lot of these palettes, a finishing powder. And then this right here is the bronzer in Natural Bronze, which is already existing. The shade Natural Bronze from Hourglass, by the way, is the same shade you can find in the Evil Eye palette from Hourglass, which came out last year, and it's honestly one of the best Hourglass bronzers. It is cool tone, and it has a fantastic matte finish. You'll see once I put it on, it is a lovely, lovely bronzer. First swatch is Dim Light, which is the finishing powder, and here's what this looks like. Very heavily swatched. Usually it disappears once you diffuse it on. Second shade is that new highlighter color, which is very gold, very metallic. But anyways, this one is called Golden Hour. Natural Bronze Bronzer, which I absolutely love. And I love that it has a matte finish to it. First new blush, bottom row, is Luminous Coral, which is this beautiful bright coral shade that has like the tiniest little bit of gold sparkles in there, but not enough that it would bother me. They're very kind of seldomly found on the formula. The lighter blush is called Sunset Flush, and it's this beautiful orangey shade that also has a few sparkles, maybe a few more than the coral shade, but also nothing that would bother me. And then this right here is the last blush, which is the one with the very purpley undertone. It's called Mauve Fusion, and I think this one would look really good on someone with a warm complexion or a tan complexion, but to be honest with you, I am scared of it. The rest of the shades though 100% work for me, and as I mentioned, I love that bronzer. Because I don't think that mauve blush will work for me, I think I'm going to try it on first on its own, and then I'll wipe it off and I'll apply the rest of the palette in unison all around my face. But because I know this one's not going to be the most flattering on me, I'm not going to apply it with the rest of the palette. Anyways, I'm going to I guess put it right here to show you. I'm buffing and I'm using the reference number 4 brush. And so here's what this looks like on me. This would not be a color I would honestly reach for myself, because it looks to me like my rosacea underneath. It looks a bit bruisey. I think it's just not a flattering color for my light complexion, but on somebody else this might look amazing. So I'm going to take this off and we'll be back to try the rest of the palette. I went ahead and took that blush off, and I'm going to start with the bronzer and my reference number 5. As I said, love this bronzer. I love that it has a good amount of pigmentation to it. I love the smoothness of it and how natural it looks, and the fact that it has a cooler tone and a matte finish. This one might be my all-time favorite shade of bronzer from these palettes, so I'm not at all upset that they brought it back for the Swan palette. I just really enjoy the natural look of it. Here's the bronzer alone, fully applied all throughout the face. I love it. It simply is the perfect tone for my complexion. Now that the bronzer is fully applied, I'm going to apply this coral blush with the reference number 4 on the high points of my cheekbone back here, because I want this part up here to be the brightest, and then we'll use the lighter color closer to the apples of my cheek. So with the same brush, I'm just jumping into the lighter shade here, and I'm going to use this one, the apples of the cheek, blend it into the darker shade back here. And see, these two blushes, even combined, work beautifully for me. I just didn't know how to add this very different undertone together with these. That's why I tried it separately. So I'm going to use the highlighter next, but I'm going to try and use it very sparingly. So I'm using this Cinch Beauty F06 brush for that. And I'm just going to add it to the top of the cheekbone, a little bit on the temple. There we go. So that's what that looks like. Hopefully that wasn't a very aggressive application. And then last but not least, and I usually like to do a buffing motion with the finishing powder with these palettes, I'm going to use this Nicola Rose N14 brush with the finishing powder, and I'm going to buff it starting with my under eye area, and I'm also going to buff it over the blush and highlighter application. Same thing, center of the forehead and over the edge of the bronzer, and I promise you it just softens everything in the most beautiful way. So check out how this side now looks a bit softer, a bit more natural in comparison to this side right here where I still haven't used the finishing powder. And so here we have it. This is the finished look with the Swan palette. 5 out of the 6 shades. This is one that absolutely works for me, and it's okay if I don't use this one color. The other 5 colors are phenomenal for my complexion. So all 3 palettes have been successfully tried, and of course I have some final thoughts to share with you on this collection. First off, let's start with the Dear palette. Did this have a lot of repeated shades? Yes, but not for me. And I'm sure not for a lot of you either, because the shades were repeated from ancient palettes, a lot of them. And so I felt like this palette was lovely. I loved the new finishing powder. The blushes were excellent. The highlighter in this one was my favorite because it's the most natural of the highlighters. And if you have a fair to light complexion, you can even be, I think, a little bit darker than me, and this palette will absolutely work for you. Right now, I would say I'm kind of like dark for a light complexion, but not quite medium, you know? So I absolutely love this one, highly enjoyed it. The blushes were my favorite, the highlighter was my favorite, the bronzer, everything. Honestly, I loved everything about this Dear palette right here. And I personally only had the finishing powder shade. Every single other shade was new for me. In regards to the Fox palette, this one absolutely did not work for me, but that is a fantastic thing, because in previous years I have gone away with making the dark palette, the dark of the Hourglass palettes, work for my light complexion, and this year I could not get away with it, and that is fantastic news, because that means that if you have a dark complexion, this one actually has shades that will work for you, and that is great news. So if you've been waiting for a dark Hourglass palette to go for, I don't think this one will work for very deep complexions, but dark complexions can absolutely use this one. My only wish is that they would have made the bronzer even deeper, because the bronzer is, I think, a bit too close to the shade of the finishing powder. But I think it's great news that none of the shades worked for me, and so if you have a dark complexion, absolutely consider this one. And finally, the Swan palette. I really did enjoy the coral peachy shades in this one. The highlighter is a bit more metallic than I personally prefer, but I'm sure that a lot of people prefer the metallic type highlighters on themselves. The bronzer, yes, I already did have it, but it is my favorite bronzer. And the fact that they added this blush to the mix makes me think that this palette will work all the way to like tan complexions. I mean, this blush in particular will also work for dark complexions, but then the bronzer is not going to work for dark complexions. The bronzer, I think, would work for up to a medium, maybe a tan complexion. So I feel like this one's a bit of a mix. I see myself using 5 out of the 6 shades, and the bronzer is my absolute favorite. So I think for me it was worth it to get this one. But you gotta just kind of ask yourself those questions for your complexion and whether or not you're attracted to the shades that were put in this palette. I personally love peachy shades, so this right here is right up my alley. And so that was it. These palettes are beautiful. They have incredible performance. They're also a bit on the pricey side, but you can get them with a 10% discount right now. As I said, the link and the codes are down below in the description box of this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What did you think about the trying of all of the palettes? Did you get any of these? Are you loving it like I'm loving them? I would love to know, so please let me know down there. If you liked today's video, don't forget to please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, please don't leave without subscribing. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye!